Let me ask you a question. Do you remember how we used to search for answers before? No? Books have become obsolete for this a long time ago. Previously, if we wanted to know the answer to something, we had to go to Google, perform a search, and get a ranking of websites with information relating to our query. We would then read through all of them one by one to find our answer. But today, with AI systems, this job is done for us. This means we are no longer exposed to different points of view on what we want to know. This whole thing is just a bit concerning to me. GPT models are amazing. They are revolutionizing human-AI interaction. And I think that this shift not only transforms how we interact with machines, but also challenges our perception of truth and falsehood. But GPT models are not perfect. Sometimes they get things really wrong. And we call it hallucinations, a phenomenon introduced by Stephen Toller in his 1995 paper, where he refers to hallucinations as the spontaneous generation of new ideas or concepts within a neural network architecture without explicitly introducing such concepts as inputs. In the case of GPT models, the neural network has a tendency to imagine new data due to a variety of transient and permanent network disturbances, leading to seemingly innovative or creative outputs. It's something that we interpret as generative AI these days. And for large language models, sometimes the generated response looks correct at first glance, but when we dig deep, or we just use a little bit our human brains, we realize that the response is actually non-factual, nonsensical, or inconsistent with respect to our prompt. So this triggers a few questions. First, if GPTs can provide correct answers with near-perfect grammar, why do they sometimes confidently tell us things that are completely wrong? Second, what if these systems get so good that we start to blindly believe their responses as if they were the ground truth? And finally, what kind of power will they have in the future? In this video, I will try to answer these questions. I will break down how LLMs like GPTs are trained and what actually causes them to go off the rails. I have used ChatGPT almost every day now, and I have studied the math behind these models to give you a clear picture of this phenomenon. And by the end of this video, I hope you will understand why GPTs aren't truly intelligent, the issues of hallucinations and biases, and the dangers of perceiving these systems as infallible oracles. So let's dive in. Alright, one of the biggest misconceptions about GPT models is the belief that they know things or can generate entirely new ideas based on an inherent understanding of the world. However, this is far from reality. Current large language models are trained on trillions of data points, which is basically the entire digital footprint of humanity, the internet. And in order to predict the next likely word in a given sentence, it is what they do. It is not magic, it is complex probability calculations that creates the illusion of intelligence, making it seem as if the model understands more than what it actually does. To put it simple, each word exists in a multi-dimensional space, and when we input a phrase, the model plots a path through this dimension, guessing the most probably next word. But it is not thinking or understanding the meaning of the word the way we do. What it is doing is finding out which vector embedding aligns best in the vector space, using something called multi-headed attention. After the training phase, which by the way involves a huge amount of computation and energy consumption, they are fine-tuned even more for a specific task, using different techniques, such as reinforcement learning with human feedback. But in the end, it is important that we understand that they are not really reasoning or thinking in the way we do. Instead, in the case of the first versions of GPTs, they are quite literally guessing the next word in a sequence based on probabilities that result from a soft-math function in the end. So for example, imagine you are reading an essay, but every time you type a word, you pick the next one based on the output of a probability function that chooses one out of billions of probabilities, and each possibility is weighted based on patterns from everything ever written on the internet. Well, more or less that's what the basic GPT models do. It is not because it understands the word, it is because humans collectively use language in a way that reflects reality. Like, for example, when the phrase a robot must comes up, most people finish it with obey instead of exterminate. So the GPT will output the first one. Not because it knows the meaning of being obedient, but because that's what the majority of people have said about this topic before. So true intelligence, on the other hand, involves planning, learning, and modeling new concepts and new ideas about the world in general. And this is something that cannot be achieved by scaling these kinds of model. Of course, I think you can still add enough randomness to the model so that they can start extrapolating ideas by mixing existing tools. But the search space of possible ideas is so huge that it is hard for me to think that this is going to be the way we will come up with artificial general intelligence. So let me say it again. Existing models don't know facts. They know patterns. And when facts deviate from patterns, that's when hallucinations and unexpected biases start to appear. And of course, there are hallucinations leaderboards as an attempt to benchmark the models to reduce the number of hallucinations based on certain criteria, such as faithfulness, that is whether the LLMs generation fits to the given source of information, for example, when summarizing a document, or factuality, that is whether LLMs generate factual correct content based on the information acquired during training and their knowledge of the world. Therefore, it is not only hallucination, there is also the problem of unexpected bias. For example, not so long ago, one of the most mediatic quirks involving AI's handling of race and professions happened. And what happened is that often when generating images related to low-paid jobs, AI models disproportionately depicted people of Asia or African origins. And this unintended output was just the reflection of the underlying biases in the training data. The issue was corrected later, but still it is a reminder of the importance of diverse and balanced datasets in AI development. Another interesting example, Gemini, once generated ancient Romans as black individuals, flipping historical accuracy on its head. This issue gained widespread attention, prompting numerous discussions and even leading the company to pause image generation of people in Gemini. A way to mitigate hallucinations and biases is by fact-checking the response. Today, that's easier because the new versions of the models can link the responses to the sources where the information was taken. But this leads us to another problem, the crowdsourcing effect. To explain this, imagine that GPT is like Wikipedia on steroids. Most of the time, they get things right, and this is because of the role of consensus data. Think about common knowledge, like water boils at 100 Celsius degree. There is so much consensus around these types of facts that GPTs are highly reliable here. But if we ask GPTs about niche subjects or even worse, like controversial topics, then things get dicey. Since the model lacks deep understanding, it might repeat widely held but inaccurate belief. So remember, GPTs are trained on massive datasets that pull from everything online, from research papers to Reddit threads. They are essentially crowdsourcing knowledge from across the internet. But here's the thing. Much of what is online can be manipulated or misleading. So while these models generate answers that seem credible, a lot of that information might actually be wrong. Just because something gets repeated often doesn't make it true. So imagine if your entirely worldview was shaped by social media and comments. That is crazy, right? But for instance, GPTs might tell you something like humans use only 10% of their brains, which is, of course, a myth. But if they were trained on a disproportionate amount of 10% brain usage comments, this could seem a plausible argument. It doesn't care that this is scientifically disproven. It is just reflecting what it is in the data. I think this makes GPTs both fascinating and terrifying. It reflects the internet consensus with all its brilliance and all its nonsense as well. It is like talking to the more knowledgeable person you have ever met, who also happens to be a conspiracy theorist from time to time. When we use GPTs, we are not just relying on science or facts. We are relying on the collective mess of information that is the internet. And I believe it is crucial to understand this before using this type of AI for any critical task. But you may wonder, in a world of democratizing knowledge, are we opening the door to more misinformation than we realize? Trust is everything in human communication. For centuries, we have relied on a process of scientific rigor and peer reviews to validate knowledge. GPTs, however, bypass that by giving us what feels like expertise and also zero accountability. Historically, most knowledge came from thinkers, scientists, and experts. Our ancestors trusted only what they could verify. But today, thanks to crowdsourcing, anyone with an internet connection can wade in the big net, and platforms like Wikipedia are the result, reflecting what the crowd believes rather than an elite or an expert class, which is good. And the consensus views found in this discourse are often factually correct, but appear to be less accurate when dealing with controversial or uncommon subjects. Consequently, LLMs-based GPT models can propagate common knowledge accurately, yet sometimes they struggle with questions that don't have a clear consensus in the training data. So, crowdsourced truth is useful but not infallible. GPTs represent this knowledge democratization, but they do so without human judgment or discernment. As a result, blind trust in AI undermines centuries of human progress in knowledge, verification, and accountability. Without scrutiny, we risk adopting inaccuracies as ground truth. For example, in a recent study, researchers made some tests on GPT models to see how they would handle specific challenging questions. They asked about obscure subjects like ferroelectric polarization and politically sensitive topics like the war in Ukraine, and the answers varied widely, with some models making up completely fictional references. It wasn't trying to lie, it just didn't have the data to give a correct answer, so it filled in the gaps with nonsense. But when they were asked for citations on rare topics, the model often gave hallucinated results, making up papers and authors out of the blue. So on widely agreed facts, they were consistent, but controversial questions, however, produced a mix of cautious and boldness, showing just how complex AI alignments with the truth can be. This reveals the boundary of GPT reliability. They are reliable when discussing widely accepted topics. However, they might provide incorrect information on less common or controversial subjects. Therefore, it is best to use GPTs for general knowledge and be careful with specialized or debated areas. And you might be thinking, but all of this is improving right now, isn't it? Well, yes, GPTs are not static. Developers actively refine them, trying to reduce hallucinations by adding guardrails, which help GPTs avoid harmful or widely inaccurate answers, but they are not foolproof. And these guardrails mitigate but don't eliminate risk. AI is still fundamentally limited by the data it's trained on, which means that hallucinations and biases aren't going away, ever. And why? Well, because as long as GPT's models are built in the way they are, on vast amounts of unfiltered, messy, human-generated data, they will always be prone to errors. And remember, GPTs don't have a filter for truth. They don't fact-check, and that is a fundamental limitation of how they are designed. We can slap some guardrails on them, but at the end of the day, it is still just guessing the next word in a sentence. So we are moving into an era where truth might become a matter of consensus, not confirmation. GPTs could be the beginning of a shift where what is more popular online starts to define reality for many people. So, but this time, I hope it is clear why do GPTs hallucinate. It's not a bug or a glitch. It's simply how they are designed. And as GPTs continue to evolve, we face intriguing questions right now, such as, what does it mean for something to be true when so much of our information is generated by pattern predictions instead of knowledge? Could GPTs be tapping into a kind of creativity? Not human creativity, but a form of creativity output that is entirely unique to machines. Those are unanswered questions at the moment. Anyway, with GPTs becoming part of our essential systems like healthcare, law, education, the potential risks are real. Imagine an AI hallucinating a medical diagnosis or inventing legal advice. The consequences could be quite serious. Why should you care? Well, this shift isn't just about AI. It is about how we, humans, perceive and validate truth. As we bring these models into our daily life, we need to rethink what it means to know something. Here is a list of actionable insights to take into account. First, recognize AI's limitation. GPTs have safety features, but They are not foolproof. Always use your own judgment. Second, define your truth standards. In a world where AI-generated content is common, be vigilant about how you define and accept truth. Seek for multiple sources, maintain a healthy skepticism, and prioritize knowledge over convenience. Third, think critically. Approach GPT responses with a discerning mind. Treat it as a brainstorming partner, not a source of truth. Fourth, validate complex claims. If a GPT response touches on a complex or controversial topic, find reliable sources to confirm or challenge it. Just because it sounds smart doesn't mean it is accurate. Fifth, use it for general knowledge, not expert advice. Because GPT reflects popular views and general knowledge, not deep expertise. For niche or sensitive topics, rely on verified sources and specialist insights. Sixth, frame your questions clearly. When using a GPT, ask clear, specific questions. This helps reduce errors. It doesn't eliminate them, so keep checking for common misconceptions. And always, it's good to remember, AI models like ChatGPT are tools, not arbiters of truth. They are powerful assistants but require critical, thoughtful engagement from us. Wishing you to be curious, be cautious, and use them wisely. See you in the next one. Bye.